You do it alone. You probably do not talk about it. And if you stopped for 30 days, you might expect something dramatic to happen. More energy, more focus, more confidence, more control. Maybe even a completely different version of yourself. That is the story the internet often sells. 30 days without masturbation, and something hidden comes back. Your discipline, your drive, your real personality. But the body is not that simple, and private habits are almost never just one thing. So before asking what 30 days will do to you, ask something more useful. What was the habit doing for you? Because stopping for 30 days is not a moral test. It is not a medical cure. It is not proof that masturbation is harmful. It is a way to make an invisible pattern visible. And that pattern may tell you more than the number of days ever could. This is day 0, the part most people skip. Before anything changes, there is already a system. And before you compare yourself to anyone else, remember how wide normal behavior is. The National Survey of Sexual Health and Behavior, led by Indiana University researchers, found that solo masturbation is common but not universal. In the 2009 NSSHB, more than half of men ages 16 to 59 reported solo masturbation in the previous month. But many people reported much less frequent masturbation, and some reported none. That is why a 30-day break cannot be judged by frequency alone. The same break means different things depending on your baseline. There is a time. There is a place. There is a feeling. There is usually a cue. Maybe it happens at night, maybe after stress, maybe when you are bored, maybe when you cannot sleep, maybe after scrolling, maybe after an argument, maybe when you feel lonely, restless, rejected, or numb. That baseline matters. Because for many adults, masturbation can be a normal private behavior. It can be occasional, it can be chosen, it can exist without distress or consequences. The number alone does not tell the whole story. Once a week can be distressing for one person. Daily can be neutral for another. The question is not just frequency. The question is control, distress, and cost. Can you choose? Does it interfere with sleep, work, relationships, or responsibilities? Does it keep happening after you have clearly decided to stop? Does shame drive the loop, then get worse after the loop? Does the behavior solve one problem while quietly creating another? That is the baseline. Not good or bad, just honest. Then the experiment begins. Days 1 through 3 are usually not about superpowers. They are about interruption. Biologically, you are not removing one simple chemical. You are interrupting a learned reward pattern. Sexual arousal and orgasm involve the nervous system, reward pathways, and hormones such as oxytocin and prolactin. A classic human laboratory study found that plasma oxytocin increased during sexual arousal and was significantly higher around orgasm. Other research has found that prolactin rises after orgasm and appears connected to sexual satiety, the body's sense that the sexual episode is complete. A cue appears, the usual response is gone, and suddenly, your brain has to improvise. This can feel almost boring, or it can feel strangely loud. You may notice a familiar time of night, a familiar app, a familiar feeling in the body, a familiar thought that says, just this once. This does not automatically mean addiction. It means a loop has been interrupted. Habits are efficient because they save effort. A cue appears, a response follows, a reward arrives. Repeat that enough times, and the pattern becomes easier to start than to question. So when the routine disappears, the cue does not disappear with it. The stress is still there. The boredom is still there. The phone is still there. The body may still feel desire. The mind may still expect relief. That is why the first few days can feel revealing. Not because your body is proving something is wrong, but because the shortcut is gone. And without the shortcut, you can finally see what it was connected to. For some people, there is barely any discomfort. They notice the habit, skip it, and move on. For others, the missing routine creates agitation, distraction, or a strong pull back into the old pattern. That difference is information. It is not a verdict, it is data. By days 4 through 10, the experiment gets more interesting. This is when substitutions often appear. Some people scroll more, some snack more, some stay up later, some chase other forms of stimulation. Some become more irritable, some feel calmer, some feel nothing dramatic at all. This is where the break starts separating desire from habit. Libido is not the same as routine. Sexual desire can rise and fall with sleep, stress, mood, relationships, health, hormones, and ordinary biology. A habit is more specific. It has a trigger. It has a sequence. It has a reward. If the urge appears mostly when you are stressed, tired, lonely, or avoiding something, then the experiment is not only about sex, it may be about emotional regulation. The habit may have been a fast way to change your state, from tense to relieved, from bored to stimulated, from lonely to occupied, from restless to sleepy. That does not make the behavior shameful. It makes it understandable. But it also changes the question. If masturbation was serving as a stress valve, what happens when the valve is closed? Does the pressure reduce in healthier ways? Or does it leak somewhere else? That is why replacement matters. Not as a trick, as a clue. If stopping one habit simply creates another compulsive habit, the real issue may not be the specific behavior. It may be the system underneath it. Stress, avoidance, shame, sleep loss, loneliness, unmanaged anxiety. This is also where pornography changes the experiment. Masturbation and pornography are not the same variable. For some people, they are linked. For others, they are separate. If a 30-day break removes masturbation and porn at the same time, then you are not testing one behavior. You are changing a larger reward loop. Porn can add novelty, search, anticipation, endless choice, late-night time loss, and a different kind of cue. That does not mean everyone who watches porn has a disorder. It does mean the pattern should be named clearly. Someone who occasionally masturbates without distress is not in the same situation as someone who spends hours online, loses sleep, hides the behavior, feels unable to stop, and watches it damage their life. Those are different patterns, and different patterns need different answers. Days 10 through 20 are the myth zone. This is where the internet gets confident. You may hear that abstinence will transform your testosterone, that attraction will change, that confidence will explode, that your brain will reset, that 30 days proves everything. The careful answer is less dramatic. Research on masturbation, orgasm, abstinence, and hormones does not support simple claims that stopping masturbation reliably creates a long-term testosterone transformation. Small studies have found short-term hormonal changes in specific conditions, but that is not the same as proving that 30 days of abstinence produces universal strength, confidence, muscle growth, or status. The science is more limited than the internet story. For example, one small study found hormonal changes after a period of sexual abstinence, but that is not the same as proving a universal 30-day transformation. Small hormone studies cannot tell you that every person will gain confidence, status, focus, or muscle by abstaining. They can only tell you what happened in that study, under those conditions, with those participants. That is why this script treats big nofap claims carefully. If someone feels better, the improvement may be real, but the cause may be sleep, time, reduced porn use, less shame, or the feeling of keeping a promise to themselves. That does not make every personal story fake. It means personal stories need context. If someone says, "I stopped and my life changed," the next question is not whether they are lying. The next question is what else changed. Did they stop watching porn late at night? Did they start sleeping earlier? Did they exercise more? Did they spend less time alone with a phone? Did they remove a source of guilt? Did they join a community that gave them structure? Did they finally feel that one part of their life was under their control? Those changes can matter, but they are not all the same as a direct biological effect from abstinence. They are changes in routine, meaning sleep, environment, and self-trust. And for a private habit, those layers can be powerful. So why do some people feel better? Because changing a costly pattern can improve real things. If someone was staying up too late, losing sleep, using porn compulsively, avoiding work, feeling ashamed, or breaking promises to themselves, then stopping that loop may feel powerful. Sleep may improve, time may come back, shame may quiet down. The person may feel more aligned with their own choices. Confidence can rise when you keep a promise to yourself. But that does not mean abstinence is magic. It means self-control feels different from autopilot. And it means the benefit may come from the pattern changing, not from masturbation being universally harmful. This distinction matters because shame can imitate insight. Shame says, this behavior means I am bad. Insight says, this pattern is telling me something. Those are not the same. Shame often tightens the loop. You feel bad, you seek relief. You feel worse, you seek relief again. Insight loosens the loop. It asks what happened before the urge, what happened after, what it cost, what it solved, and whether there is another way to meet the same need. By days 20 through 30, the novelty of the challenge may fade. The big claims may feel less important, and the useful questions become quieter. What cues kept returning? Which ones faded? What emotions made the urge stronger? Did sleep change? Did focus change? Did stress change? Did you become calmer or just more tense? Did you replace the habit with something healthy? Or did a different automatic behavior move into the same empty space? Most importantly, did you feel more able to choose? This is where the 30-day break becomes a self-audit, not a diagnosis, not a badge, not a reason to look down on anyone else. A self-audit, and the self-audit has 4 parts. First, control. Could you pause the behavior when you wanted to? Second, cost. Was the pattern affecting sleep, focus, relationships, mood, or responsibilities? Third, function. What problem was the habit solving? Relief. Stress, boredom, loneliness, sleep, avoidance. Fourth, flexibility. When the old response was unavailable, could you choose another response that actually helped? A walk, a shower, a conversation, sleep, exercise. Writing down what you were feeling. These are not replacements because masturbation is automatically bad. They are tests of whether the behavior was one option among many or the only exit your brain trusted. If the month was easy, that may tell you the behavior was not controlling much. If the month was difficult, that does not automatically mean something is wrong. It may show that the habit was connected to stress, sleep, boredom, loneliness, or routine. If the month revealed distress, consequences, secrecy, broken promises, or loss of control, that is worth taking seriously. Not with panic, with support. Compulsive sexual behavior is not defined by having a libido. It is not defined by being sexually curious. It is not defined by failing a challenge. Clinically, the concern is more about repeated loss of control, significant distress or impairment, and continued behavior despite consequences. And even then, diagnosis belongs with qualified professionals, not comment sections. So if this topic feels heavy, or if sexual behavior feels genuinely out of control, talking to a qualified mental health or sexual health professional can be a responsible step. Not because you are broken, because private patterns are easier to change when they are not carried alone. At the end of 30 days, there are several possible answers. Maybe very little changed. Maybe your body felt mostly the same. Maybe your mind got louder for a while. Maybe sleep changed. That part has research behind it. A Journal of Sleep Research diary study found that both partnered sex and masturbation with orgasm were perceived by men and women as improving sleep latency and sleep quality. An earlier Frontiers in Public Health study also found that people often perceived orgasm before sleep as helpful for sleep onset and sleep quality. This helps explain why stopping can feel different at night. If masturbation had become part of your sleep routine, removing it may reveal a real sleep habit, not just a sexual habit. Maybe you learned the habit was neutral. Maybe you learned the guilt around it was the real problem. Maybe you learned it was tied to porn, stress, avoidance, or sleep. Maybe you learned you had more choice than you thought, or less choice than you wanted. All of those answers are more useful than a myth. And after 30 days, you do not need to turn the result into an identity. You do not need to become the person who never does it. You do not need to become the person who defends it at all costs. The useful answer is more ordinary. What pattern gives you a life that feels honest, stable, and chosen? For some people, that may mean continuing normally without shame. For others, it may mean setting boundaries around porn, late-night phone use, or stress habits. For others, it may mean getting help with a pattern that feels bigger than willpower. The same 30 days can lead to different conclusions because people are not running the same experiment. They are bringing different histories, different bodies, different beliefs, and different loops, because the point of the experiment is not to prove masturbation is bad, and it is not to prove abstinence is magic. The point is to see the pattern clearly. What happens before the urge? What happens after? What does it give you? What does it cost you? And when the cue appears, can you choose? That is the real question, not whether you can count 30 days. Not whether the internet approves. Not whether your private life fits someone else's rule. The point is not whether you masturbate. The point is whether you can choose.